Discover the incredible moment a billionaire witnessed a waitress feeding his disabled son the true price of wealth. Rain pattered against the diner's windows as Jake stepped inside Ma's diner, the familiar scent of bacon and coffee wrapping around him like a long-lost embrace. It was a stark contrast to the steel and glass towers that dominated his life now. This was where he had started, where the air was filled with laughter, not meetings or money. As a self-made billionaire, the world saw him as a triumph. But here, amid the booths and linoleum floors, he felt the weight of his solitude pressing down across the room. He spotted Sarah, a waitress with an easy smile, effortlessly balancing trays of food. It was the tender way she helped her little boy, feeding him with patience while chatting to customers, that caught Jake off guard. He had built his empire on cutthroat transactions, but here was warmth, a love that outshone the brightest jewels in his collection. A pang of something unrecognizable hit him. Was it envy? Sadness? The contrast of her life to his riches was sharp and unsettling. He remembered the joy of small things, of sharing a meal without the looming specter of profit margins. Just then, his phone buzzed against the table. A text from his corporate board flashed across the screen. The diner would be demolished for a new development project. Business as usual for Jake, except it wasn't. He felt a flutter of panic, a turmoil rising in his chest. You can't destroy my ass, he thought instinctively. Didn't they understand? This place was more than just another investment opportunity, it was a lifeline for others like Sarah. But ambition had taught him to prioritize profits over feelings. The moral dilemma pressed down on him. Was it worth sacrificing a piece of his past for another lucrative venture? As he pondered, he observed Sarah laughing with customers, her joy a stark reminder of what he lost in his climb to the top. Deep down, he craved human connection, yet here he found himself on the verge of severing threads that tied him to a simpler life. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Desperation clawed at him as he rose from his seat, crossing the diner to where Sarah was trying to juggle a smile for her son while serving another table. I can help, he blurted out, startling her. I can talk to my board. We can save this place. The worry etched on her face twisted into anger. He saw the rejection form in her eyes, felt the distance grow colder between them. You don't know what it's like. She spat, her voice rising to slice through the din of the diner. In that moment, the bitter realization struck him. He didn't. He had long since traded the soft melody of struggle for the harsh symphony of success. The walls he had built to separate himself from his past felt like they were closing in. The laughter around him, once a joyful sound, echoed like a haunting reminder of what he lost. Jake stood there, grappling with the tumult of his decision. Would indulging in corporate ambition mean sacrificing his humanity? Would making a choice for Sarah mean abandoning all he had fought for? The storm inside him raged on, pushing him toward a terrifying precipice, a choice that could cost him everything. The confrontation with Sarah hung in the air, electric and raw. Jake's chest tightened, the weight of her words reverberating like a drum in his ears. He didn't know what it meant to struggle, but standing there surrounded by the hum of conversations, the clatter of utensils, the smell of home-cooked meals, he felt a crack forming in the armor he had built around himself. Sarah, he finally said, his voice almost a whisper, I want to understand. But she only shook her head, her disappointment palpable. The defiance in her stance reflected a life steeped in resilience, a stark contrast to the cushioned existence he had constructed. Every layer of his wealth felt like a barrier growing between them, alienating him from the very people he once identified with. As he turned away, frustration bubbled within him, mingling with a reluctant curiosity. He began to question everything he thought he knew about success. The steel and glass towers he climbed for legitimacy now felt cold and hollow. The deals that had won him admiration were staining his conscience. What kind of triumph was it if it came at the cost of losing touch with humanity? Jake slipped out of the diner, the rain still falling softly but now accompanied by the unmistakable sound of his own heartbeat thumping in his ears, orchestrating a symphony of self-reflection. Each raindrop seemed to tap at the walls he had fortified over years. With each step away from Mars, he felt an unusual sense of urgency to redefine what mattered. He reached his luxury sedan but hesitated, his fingers lingering on the polished surface. Instead of climbing in, he made a sudden decision, he would take a walk. The crisp air cleared his mind, allowing thoughts to swirl freely about Sarah, her son, and their fragile lives. Perhaps there was more to life than numbers on a balance sheet. Jake turned down a side street, trudging through the puddles that mirrored his flickering thoughts. On a whim, he found himself in front of a local community center, the bright mural outside vibrating with energy. Curiously, he stepped inside, greeted by the chirps of children and the chatter of families a world far removed from his own. His gaze fell upon a bulletin board plastered with community needs and events, a stark reminder of the real struggles that unfolded around him every day. One flyer caught his eye: there would be a fundraiser to support families with disabled children. It struck him Sarah's son was among them. In that moment, the gritty reality of the sacrifices made for wealth slapped him awake. He could feel the gears of change turning in his mind. What if he used his resources to help? It began as a flickering thought, but with each heartbeat, it grew into a resolve. The shadows of doubt began to dissipate as he imagined turning his back on the demolition plan, approaching Sarah, and proposing to lead efforts that could not just save the diner, but support families like hers. The prospect challenged him. Could he bridge the cowardice of his past actions with boldness to confront his greed? The idea of confronting his board felt nerve-wracking, yet it also ignited a spark of bravery. He realized that perhaps this path could lead him back to the vitality he had traded for solitude. As he stood in the hallway of the community center, a conviction took root. He would no longer be merely a billionaire, he would become an ally. The thought filled him with a nervous energy that coursed through his veins, mapping out a new direction, a newfound identity. But with each step back to the diner and the confrontation that awaited him, self-doubt crept in. What if they rejected him? What if Sarah still saw him as just another corporate predator? Jake realized that as invigorating as this new path seemed, facing the consequences of his decisions would be a monumental test of the man he hoped to become. With purpose in his stride, he turned on his heel toward Ma's diner, ready to confront not only his past but the ghosts of his future. The moment of truth approached. He would soon discover if the choice he was about to make would lead him to redemption or further estrangement. The bell above Ma's diner chimed as Jake stepped inside, invading the comfortable warmth with a palpable chill of uncertainty. He scanned the room, spotting familiar faces whose lives were entwined with the four walls of the diner. Laughter echoed, but in this moment, the joy felt distant and foreign. He swallowed hard, his heart racing at the prospect of what lay ahead. There was Sarah, serving coffee to a couple at the counter, her demeanor professional yet burdened by an unyielding weight. The sight of her reignited his nerve, stirring further realization within him. This was merely about saving a building. It was about saving a community, connecting with those whose struggles he had long ignored. As he moved toward her, fear intertwined with determination, prompting an inner dialogue about the kind of man he aspired to be. "Jake," she said without raising her eyes, her tone cool yet shaking, as if touched by the electricity of their prior argument. "I didn't expect to see you back here." "Yeah, I needed to talk." His voice fell thin against the background noise, and he struggled to find the right words that would not only convey his intentions but also reveal the changes brewing within him. "I want to help for real this time." Her eyes flicked up, disbelief etched on her face. "Help? After planning to tear this place down? That's quite the turnaround." Her skepticism stung more than he anticipated. He felt the urge to retreat into his defenses, to argue that he had seen the light. Instead, he stood firm, refusing to back down. "I know I can't undo the past, but I'm ready to channel my resources into something meaningful. I want to make a difference." The flicker of doubt in her eyes was replaced by something else: curiosity, perhaps. But even that glint quickly faded. "Words are easy, Jake. Actions are what count. You have a history of running away from the consequences of your decisions." Frustration boiled within him, yet he remained composed. "You don't know what I'm grappling with. I thought success was defined by deals and numbers, but I was wrong. I want to support families like yours, to be an ally, not an adversary." Half of him was desperate to convince her, while the other half feared vulnerability. Still, as he laid his intentions bare, he observed the people around him: a waitress filling a cup, a young family sharing a meal, laughter bridging their burdens. He realized the stakes were higher than he had initially understood. He wasn't just fighting for Sarah's trust, he was fighting for faith in his own humanity. "I think you don't realize the depth of this situation," she replied quietly, a hint of softness invading her steady demeanor. "It's not just about money. It's about understanding and commitment." "Then let me understand," Jake proclaimed, the conviction strengthening his resolve. "I want to be there for you and your son. I want to fight with you instead of against you." The weight of her gaze pierced through him, seeking authenticity. It was a challenge he hadn't expected, but one he was beginning to appreciate. This was not just a conversation, it was an opportunity to confront the very essence of who he was and who he wanted to be. Yet, in her silence, he feared that the moment could slip away, much like the intuitive connection they had formed. "How can I trust you?" Her voice was barely a whisper, holding the anxiety of years spent fighting. "Trust is built on action. Let me show you what I can do." Jake felt a swell of determination rise within him, a beacon that radiated possibility. But as the words stumbled from his lips, doubt gnawed at the edges of his confidence. Could he genuinely make a difference? Was he truly ready to confront not only his corporate past but the lingering fear of vulnerability? As the steady cadence of life inside the diner continued, he knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. But in that moment, amidst the clattering dishes and fleeting exchanges of humanity, Jake felt a flicker of hope transforming doubt into a commitment to change. Their conversation simmered in the air, pregnant with the weight of unspoken possibilities. He awaited her response, wondering if this would be the turning point in his life or if it would further entrench him within the shadows of his former self. The silence hung, suspenseful and unresolved, leaving Jake teetering on the edge of his next choice. Would he emerge as the ally he aspired to be, or would he prove Sarah right? "Can you give me a moment?" Sarah finally asked, her voice steadying as her gaze softened. She stepped to the side, mouth pressed into a thin line. The action surprised Jake, pulling him from a whirlpool of uncertainty and into a clearer focus. He had hoped for engagement, a chance to discuss what he might offer, yet now it felt more like he was being ordered into the arena for judgment. "Sure. Take your time." His throat tightened, the sudden realization of vulnerability dawning on him. Here, in a diner suffused with the scent of home-cooked meals and the faint hum of distant conversations, Sarah was his compass, his tether to a humanity he had failed to uphold for too long. Jake shifted his weight, feeling the need to fill the silence, but words hesitated at the edge of his tongue. Instead, he absently picked at the edge of a napkin, every fiber of the paper a testament to the countless meals shared in this very space. For so long, he had occupied a world of transactions, uncaring exchanges devoid of deeper connection, a world that seemed to suffocate him now. With lingering hesitation, Sarah returned, not alone but accompanied by a young boy, his small frame tucked within a brightly colored jacket. Jake's heart plummeted at the sight. He knew this child was Sarah's son, but now he understood this was the immediate embodiment of that familial struggle she had alluded to. "Jake, this is Michael," she introduced, although it felt an infinitesimal distance linger within the air, laden with unspoken implications. The boy's eyes, wide and curious, roamed over Jake, but it was the flicker of recognition that struck Jake hard. He could see fragments of Sarah in him: strength, resilience, the pursuit of light amidst the struggles. "Hey there, Michael." Jake crouched ever so slightly, forcing a warm smile that belied the tumult swirling in his chest. "What do you like to do?" "Legos," he replied quietly, the shyness masking an eager enthusiasm. "I build the tallest towers." Jake's mind raced, connecting small bridges of understanding. Those towers were symbols of stability, something he had long neglected in his own life. Maybe this was a moment of revelation, not just about the child or Sarah but about the kind of man he could become. "I love building things, too," Jake said, seizing the opening, feeling a drive to connect beyond mere words. "But sometimes, I build things that don't last. They crumble. I want to help build things that stand strong." "I like strong towers," Michael asserted, brow furrowing as he considered Jake's statement. "They don't fall, right?" "No, they don't. That's how I want things to be." Jake leaned in, the naivety in Michael's words igniting determination within him. He understood then that it wasn't only about rebuilding buildings, it was about reconstructing trust, not with brick and mortar but through promises kept. Sarah stood silently, observing the interplay, the tension slowly dissipating. She seemed almost surprised, perhaps witnessing a flicker of sincerity she hadn't anticipated. It rallied something within Jake, a latent aspiration to forge an authentic connection, not just with her but with Michael too. "What if we built something together?" Jake proposed, emboldened. "Like a tower of our own. A community center. Somewhere for kids to play, families together." Sarah took a step back, crossing her arms, but there was no lingering skepticism in her posture, more awareness, a mulling over of possibilities. "You think it's that easy?" "I think it's worth trying," he replied, heart racing at the vulnerability yet palpable hope that coursed through him. He was on the precipice of something that could alter not just the trajectory of his life but potentially the fate of the space they occupied. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, hinting at growth but littered with uncertainty. "We need more than just a dream, you know," she said, the challenge almost playful now, and he could sense a shift, a prompting for dialogue instead of dismissal. "Then let us figure it out together. I'm willing to work for it, to earn your trust." Something clicked inside him, follow through. Not just words, but concrete plans, starting with small actions leading to monumental changes. As the weight in the room began to morph into collaborative energy, he could see the faint threads of possibility weaving between them. "Can I help too?" Michael piped up, eyes wide with earnestness. The child's innocent ambition sparked something vital within Jake, a reminder that this wasn't just about saving a building, it was about creating a legacy, one built on connection, responsibility, and shared dreams. Jake breathed deeply, the atmosphere shifting, yet still thick with unresolved threads. "Absolutely, buddy. We can all be part of this." Both Sarah and Michael looked at him, a silent pact forming beneath the warmth of shared hope. But as exhilaration took hold, uncertainty loomed still. Was he truly capable of following through? Outside, the day shifted toward dusk, casting long shadows through the diner windows. The first step had been taken, but every great journey contained risks and potential pitfalls. Would he falter under the weight of expectations, or would the path ahead illuminate the man he aspired to be? Jake felt his pulse quicken, a new adventure beckoning, yet the stakes had never been higher. The moment of truth was approaching, and he questioned how far he was willing to go to keep his fragile promise. Intense chatter filled the diner as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm ember glow that penetrated the cozy atmosphere. But Jake's heart pounded with an urgency that drowned out the noise around him. Every shared smile with Michael felt like a thread weaving him closer to a life he had long abandoned, a life filled with purpose, generosity, and genuine connection. As he sat across from Sarah and her son, he battled fierce self-doubt. Was he truly prepared to step beyond his comfort zones? His past was littered with broken commitments, and yet, the innocent enthusiasm radiating from Michael stirred an uncharted conviction within him. He craved to be more. "Okay then," Sarah said, the cautious optimism lingering in her tone. "What is the first step?" Jake inhaled deeply. "Let us canvass the area. Talk to people. Get their input. See what they need." The words came tumbling out, fueled by adrenaline. It was a foundational step, a low-risk start that would keep him anchored and grounded. "Sounds good," Sarah replied, an inkling of excitement surfacing behind her guarded demeanor. "But it might be a bigger undertaking than you are anticipating." "I'm in it for the long haul," Jake asserted, the fire in his chest kindling. "I want to earn your trust, show you I'm serious." A glance at Michael revealed that the boy's bright eyes sparkled with renewed interest. Inspiration blossomed within Jake's chest. It was not merely about building a structure, they would build a bridge of connection, a metaphorical tower equipping him to rise above his past failures. "Can we go tomorrow?" Michael asked, enthusiasm spilling forth. The eagerness in his voice sliced through Jake's uncertainties, leading him to imagine stepping into an unfamiliar world outside of his current routine. "First thing in the morning," Jake agreed, heartened by the child's determination. There was a raw honesty in Michael's hope that fueled his own wilting inspiration. It struck him profoundly. He wasn't just doing this for Sarah or Michael, this was about reclaiming his identity and realigning his moral compass. Sarah's brow furrowed slightly as she considered the potential pitfalls. "But what if people reject the notion?" she interjected, her eyes darting around the diner, almost as if searching for reasons to doubt. "What if they don't want anything to change?" Jake paused momentarily, the weight of her question tugging at the very core of his resolve. It felt like stepping into murky water, where visibility was restricted and safety was an illusion. Yet, as he looked into Sarah's eyes, observing glimpses of weariness mixed with underlying hope, he felt a flicker of resilience sparking again. "It's possible," he acknowledged, his tone firm yet grounded in reality. "But every once in a while, we have to risk the uncertainty to invite something better in. Even if only a few people feel it, it matters." The room grew quiet around them as Sarah contemplated his words. In this moment, Jake sensed the growing complexity of their undertaking, the potential cost and the fragile nature of their efforts, a microcosm reflecting not just the project, but his own personal journey. The reality of commitment stared him down. Jake's history painted an unflattering portrait of evasion when faced with challenges. The prospect of tasting defeat echoed in his mind, but so did the sweet scent of the possibility of real change. Could he truly rise up and build something lasting when layers of doubt were still smothering him like a heavy fog, with each heartbeat thudding in unison with his breathing? He vowed silently to confront those fears. What he didn't yet understand was that with every step forward, he would need to face the quiet shadows of his past decisions, a chilling reminder that the path to growth was often a rugged one lined with both opportunity and vulnerability. "Let us do this," he finally stated, the resolve swimming to the surface. "Together. I'll show you I can make this work." As they stood to leave, a new sense of camaraderie settled over them, but beneath that camaraderie lurked unrecognizable fears. Outside, the evening air was cooling, a reminder that action awaited, yet uncertainty danced like shadows around the edges. His heart jumped at the sudden realization: might this endeavor not only restore his connection with the community but challenge the very notion of who he was as a person? Jake understood that the quest for redemption began with the first step. Each choice thereafter would shape not just the project but fundamentally change him. And without warning, an unexpected question surfaced, challenging his fresh resolve. How far was he willing to go, not just for the community, but to uncover the depths of his own strength? The next morning's air promised revelation, but trepidation lingered, causing unease. Could he truly handle what lay ahead, or were the ghosts of his past threatening to resurface? The morning dawned with a crispness that only the first light of a new experience could bring. Jake stepped out of his apartment, the weight of vulnerability still heavy on his shoulders, but today, there was a whisper of determination in the air. The sun stretched its golden fingers across the neighborhood, illuminating the streets he had often walked but now approached with fresh eyes and renewed purpose. As he made his way to Sarah's place, he mentally mapped out the agenda, the people to talk to, the concerns to address. Each step was deliberate, his mind racing yet focused. What would he say? How would he listen? For too long, his decisions had been dictated by fear of judgment or rejection. Today felt different. It felt like a rebirth. When he reached Sarah's door, Michael flung it open, his small frame bouncing with excitement. "Are you ready, Jake?" the boy asked, his enthusiasm infectious. The sight of him lit a fire within Jake. This was not just about reclamation, this was about crafting a narrative driven by hope, courage, and genuine interaction. With a nod, they stepped outside, joined by Sarah, who still wore a cautious smile. Her confidence in Jake's ability was palpable, yet Jake could sense her underlying concerns, a mirror reflecting his own. The trio set out toward the neighborhood, the air electric with anticipation. As they walked, Jake strategically rounded corners and veered down streets where familiarity blurred into the unknown. They entered the local park, a crossroads of lives and stories, the perfect venue for gathering insights. Jake noticed people interacting, children playing, couples sharing quiet laughter, and elderly individuals resting on benches, watching the world go by. Each person represented a thread woven into the fabric of community, a tapestry he yearned to explore. "Let us start with those two," he said, pointing toward a pair of women enjoying a shaded bench. His voice was steadier than he felt inside, a strange mix of excitement and dread bubbling below the surface. As they approached, Jake's heart raced. "Hi there. We're trying to understand what people in our community need. Can we ask you a few questions?" The words spilled out, surprising him with their confidence. The woman turned, and Jake felt an immediate connection in their welcoming smiles. He drew strength from that warmth. As they engaged in conversation, he discovered their frustrations, aspirations, and visions for a better neighborhood. Each story they shared was a step further into his own path of rediscovery, a reminder that their experiences mattered, that his commitment could spark change. With each interaction, Jake felt his uncertainties begin to unravel. His past failures, instead of holding him back, transformed into lessons propelling him forward. He learned to listen attentively, to embrace vulnerability in others, thus illuminating his own. After several conversations, the sun dipped in the sky, casting long shadows that echoed Jake's evolving resolve. Michael's laughter broke through his introspection, reminding him of the joy they sought to create, a reminder of why he had embarked on this journey in the first place. As they started their walk back home, Jake felt lighter somehow, as if shedding the old skin of self-doubt that had clung to him for so long. But amid the triumph of today lay an unsettling realization: how could he reconcile the ingrained patterns of avoidance with this newfound purpose? A storm brewed within him, a swirl of questions demanding answers. What if the engagement was just a temporary bomb for a deeper issue in him? Had he truly changed, or was he merely a moth drawn to the flame of redemption? He glanced at Sarah and Michael, whose bright smiles illuminated the evening gloom. It hit him profoundly. The journey was not merely about transformation, it was about confronting the truth of who he had been and choosing to redefine that legacy. As they reached his door, he paused, a sense of urgency whirling within him. What if his commitment faltered? What if the doubts returned, stronger than before? Jake knew that tomorrow would require even more than courage, it would require cerebral wrestling with the darker corners of his spirit. The evening felt ripe with promise, yet a chilling undercurrent whispered of challenges yet to come. He had taken a monumental step today, but hidden in every victory was the potential for profound personal conflict. Could he face the ghosts of his past not just for the sake of others but for the chance to finally reclaim his own story? As he unlocked the door, doubt flooded back in, chilling the warmth he'd garnered. Tomorrow would be critical, he would have to confront his own barriers if he wanted to build something lasting. How would he muster the strength to face the truths he had long avoided? Jake awoke with the dawn, already wrestling with the implications of yesterday's progress. The shadows in his room seemed to echo his thoughts, doubt clawing at the edges of his newfound excitement. He sat up in bed, the world outside his window vibrant and full of possibilities, yet internally he felt adrift in a storm of emotions. Showering did little to wash away the uncertainty. He caught his reflection in the mirror, recalling the confident words he had spoken to the woman in the park. Yet behind that facade of determination lay a deeper truth, one he was hesitant to confront. How had he gathered the courage to reach out to others when he struggled to connect with himself? After a quick breakfast, Jake paced around his kitchen, playing out scenarios in his mind. They had accomplished so much, but the lingering doubts tightened their grip. What if the effort he put into understanding the community didn't translate to real change? And what if he failed to sustain this new direction? The weight of expectation loomed large. He didn't just want to expand his understanding of others, he desperately needed to reclaim a sense of self that had been lost for too long. But recognizing that need was one thing, confronting it was quite another. He made his way to Sarah's, each step deliberate yet hesitant. His friends had become a sort of lifeline, pulling him toward a path of self-discovery he had long avoided. Yet beneath the gratitude he felt toward them was a sense of obligation to honor their support. What if he faltered and tangled them in the mess of his demons? Upon reaching Sarah's door, he noticed her pacing nervously inside, her hands fidgeting as she glanced out the window. "Hey, ready for round 2? She asked, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just hoping I can keep it together," Jake replied, his voice betraying his unease. "Just remember, we're in this together," Michael chimed in, his innocence a soft reprieve against the chaos in Jake's mind. With renewed support from both, they ventured into the community again, seeking out a new set of voices, eager to further weave the intricate tapestry of local sentiments, challenges, and hopes. The park was buzzing with life, a stark contrast to Jake's internal turmoil. As they approached a small group gathering around a food truck, Jake noticed a man chatting animatedly with several women. He had seen the man before, always present, always jovial, but something about his essence seemed hollow today. "Why don't we start there?" Jake suggested, feeling a pull of intrigue at the dynamic unfolding before him. They approached the group, and as Jake introduced himself, he was surprised by how his heart rate steadied. Listening became easier as he drew from newfound strength, matching the lively energy around him. Yet as the conversation flowed, he began to notice cracks in the jovial facade of the man. A few tense moments passed when the laughter waned, the man's smile faltering under the weight of unspoken words. Jake felt an inexplicable connection to his struggle, resonating with the man's hidden pains, the way he too had buried feelings for far too long. After a brief silence, Jake steered the conversation toward deeper issues, prodding gently. To his astonishment, the man began to share about his struggles with unemployment, unexpected obstacles that hindered his dreams. Jake felt the stirring inside, the realization that vulnerability breeds authenticity. It resonated deeply within him. This was the very essence of connection he sought. But then it struck him, their conversation mirrored much of what he had previously experienced, yet this was a chance to break free from his own shadow. He dropped his guard and related his story, exposing raw truths that had sat festering inside for years, moments of doubt, the paralyzing fear of failure, and the urgency to break from the past. The man's eyes widened as he listened, a bridge forming between them. That bond, built on shared struggles, stirred something powerful within Jake, an inkling that perhaps all was lost after all. Yet amid this newfound catharsis, a nagging question surfaced: had he truly begun to confront his own ghost, or had he merely shifted the focus onto someone else's pain? As the group continued to discuss their experiences, Jake's mind raced. What would it take for him to truly face his past? The day was drawing to a close, and Jake felt as if he was teetering on the edge of discovery. The moment felt charged with potential, a prelude to something monumental. But as he navigated the intricacies of connection, the weight of expectation loomed ominously overhead. Could he rise to the occasion when the conversation turned back to him? His resolve quaked under the pressure. And as he glanced at Sarah and Michael, their eager expressions unwavering, he understood tomorrow would not just be about change, it would be about diving into the uncomfortable depths of his psyche and embracing the truths he had buried for too long. The challenge was clear and unavoidable. How would he navigate this labyrinth of his past, and what truths lay waiting for him at its center? He awoke to a darkened room, shadows advancing toward him. Jake hesitated in bed, dread prickling at the back of his mind. Today was the day he had committed to confront his past. There was no more retreating into the roles he had assumed or the facades he had constructed. He felt the weight of the world resting on his shoulders, a crushing reminder that change demanded not just words, but action. Motivated by urgency, he left his bed and prepared for the day, the act of brushing his teeth feeling like a battle against the relentless tide of uncertainty. Questions rolled through his mind like an unending echo. What if he exposed too much? What if vulnerability turned into ridicule? Armed with this anxiety, he reminded himself that he needed to be authentic. If he wanted to connect, he would need to shed the layers of pretense once and for all. Breakfast felt like an eternity, his uneaten toast growing cold as he contemplated the moments ahead. He was no longer just Jake, he was seeking to reclaim his identity. But who was that person? The clarity he desired seemed just beyond reach, an elusive specter dancing around corners of his mind. As he made his way to the park, anticipation swirled through him, a faint flickering of hope hidden within his trepidation. The air had a crispness that suggested change was around the corner, but which way would he turn? His heartbeat quickened with every step, the ground beneath him heavy with both promise and fear. Jake spotted Sarah and Michael from a distance, their familiar figures a balm to his nerves. Meeting their gaze anchored him, a reminder of the support he had. "Ready?" Sarah asked, her expression a blend of encouragement and curiosity. He nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at him. As they walked toward a bench where a few people gathered, he could see familiar faces and strangers alike, each representing a spectrum of lost connections and buried stories. The instinct to retreat bubbled within him, but he squashed it. Today was about exposure, an authentic exchange where masks would be discarded. "Let us begin with recounting our own experiences," Michael suggested, enthusiasm brightening his features. The suggestion was simple yet effectively disarming. Jake felt the urge to fold inward, to shrink away. But he knew that honesty could lead to breakthroughs, both personal and communal. With a deep breath, he stepped forward. "I've struggled with feeling lost, unsure of my direction, caught in the thick of fear and expectation," he began, his voice steady despite the tremor within. He revealed his past, how he had navigated through disappointment and harbored the intrinsic desire for validation. The words poured out like a flood, releasing pent-up frustration and confusion. To his surprise, the atmosphere shifted, the audience leaning in, their attention rapt. A woman spoke up, sharing her own journey. Her voice sparked a new chain reaction of honesty, sparking the group into deeply personal confessions. Vulnerability blossomed, wounds were bared, fears faced openly. As narratives intertwined, Jake felt a jolt of connection, a thread woven between him and each speaker. He was no longer alone in his turmoil. Their collective experiences resonated with an ache that felt hauntingly familiar, an affirmation of the shared human journey. Yet, amid revelations and growing comfort, something gnawed at Jake. The specter of his unfulfilled potential haunted him. Although he sat in solidarity with others, there remained a distance. He had spoken his truth but still felt tethered to his insecurities, unable to leap fully into the light. The urge to confront this sensation surged within him. He realized the day's discourse wouldn't just liberate others, it might shatter his own barriers as well. What if, he pondered, I push for even more honesty, even if it's uncomfortable? In that moment, the atmosphere swelled with raw energy everyone shared, each confession peeling back another layer of self-doubt. But as the group turned their attention toward Jake again, anticipation hung heavy in the air. The question loomed, would he take the step into a deeper vulnerability, or allow his fear to silence him once more? The answer teetered just on the edge of his consciousness, a moment of reckoning approaching with crushing intensity. Would he take the plunge, dive headfirst into his unresolved struggles, or would he retreat once more into the shadows of self-doubt? Jake could feel the eyes of his friend Sarah's relentless hope and Michael's unwavering faith in him. There was no escape now, only the commitment to confront the inner specters awaiting him. This was it, the moment would define him, transcending both what he had experienced and who he had been. With breath held, Jake prepared to breach the depths of his psyche. The truth awaited him, and he knew he had to embrace it fully or risk losing the chance for true transformation that lay beyond the horizon. Jake stood before the group, heart hammering, each pulse a reminder of the fear pulling in his gut. He recognized the faces around him, each person a fellow traveler on this winding road of vulnerability. Yet, in this moment of gathering strength and courage, a sharp sense of isolation crawled up his spine. The comfort he had derived from their shared experiences suddenly morphed into a daunting chasm that separated him from them. He felt their silent encouragement pressing against him, but inside, a battle raged. The whispers of self-doubt echoed loudly, drowning out the support wrapping around him like a warm blanket. What if what I share only adds to their pain? It was a familiar thought, one that had kept him indoors and quiet for far too long. He noticed Sarah leaning forward, her eyes brimming with a mix of curiosity and awe, as if she could sense the internal struggle he was swamped in. It was then that he realized this moment was not merely about him, it was about owning his narrative and, in doing so, encouraging others to do the same. The seed of his realization sprouted, spreading roots into the soil of his fears. Taking a steadying breath, he concentrated on the rhythm of his heartbeat, each thump syncing with his resolve. I want to share something deeper, he thought, summoning the courage buried beneath layers of hurt. The words felt weighted with gravity, heavy yet liberating. The truth is, he began, his voice steadier than he felt, I've avoided confronting the real reason behind my fears. For years, I've shielded myself from acknowledging the shame that stems from my childhood. I grew up believing I wasn't good enough, lost amidst high expectations and failures. Every setback replayed like a haunting song, and even now, that music never fades completely. Heads nodded around him, and he could see reflections of shared pain dance in their eyes. This wasn't just a confessional, this was a moment where authentic connections unfurled. Fueled by the energy of the group, he pressed on. I've often likened my past to a pile of debris obstructing my path. I've let it build and build until it became this mountain I feared to climb. But I didn't come here today just to share a story, I came to challenge myself. He paused and glanced around, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The stakes were rising, and he could feel the group holding its breath with him. I want to forgive myself for feeling inadequate. I want to stop fearing the expectations and begin defining them on my own terms. As if on cue, the collective air shifted, reverberating with his declaration. There was something transformative about it, almost tangible. The realization that others shared his struggle ignited a fire within him, one that burned away the fog of his insecurities. A woman across the circle spoke next, her voice trembling but fierce. She opened up about her battles with mental health, the silence that had suffocated her sense of self for years. As she spoke, Jake felt a surge of inspiration at how a single voice could spark a wave of openness. He watched as the group rallied together, each person lifting the other's burdens just by sharing their truths, yet an unsettling question swam to the surface of his mind. Was his desire for forgiveness enough? Could he truly free himself from the shadows that clung so stubbornly? It was as if marked competence and potential lay on the other side of this emotional frontier, taunting him with its proximity. Emerging from the confessions, Jake realized this was merely the beginning of his journey. Acknowledging his past served not just as relief but as an invitation for deeper exploration. If he could confront growth and healing, could he also face the underlying causes of his fears head-on? Jake leaned in, determination rising within him. What if I took this further? What if I created goals that challenged my limits? What if I actually pursued the dreams I've left dormant for so long? The answers started lining up like stars in a nebulous sky, unpredictable yet mesmerizing. Gazing into the faces around him, he saw more than just empathy. He witnessed a community made stronger through shared vulnerability. As the session progressed, with stories intertwining and encouraging murmurs filling the air, Jake felt a tether connecting him to this moment. But a new, terrifying thought crept in: what would happen if moments of vulnerability turned into actionable steps? Would he dare to carve out a new narrative from this newfound strength, or would he shy away? And as each voice contributed to the story they were all weaving together, Jake's heart pounded, anticipation and trepidation taking hold. The time had come to embrace the next phase of his journey, a path he was determined to forge, illuminated by truth yet shadowed by the lingering question, what if facing my past was just the prologue to a greater transformation? Jake stood in the entrance of Mo's diner, the familiar scent of breakfast wafting through the air, but today it felt different, almost sacred. Instead of feeling like an outsider in this world of warmth and laughter, he now felt a deep sense of belonging that surged through him, igniting both purpose and resolution. The past few weeks had transformed him, molded by the raw truths he had faced, both within himself and through his connections with Sarah and Michael. The ambition that had once fueled his rise in the corporate world now took on a new shade. It was no longer about profits or accolades, it was about people. Each interaction he'd shared with Sarah's community had been a building block in reshaping who he was, moving him from a solitary titan to an empathetic ally. His heart swelled as he spotted Sarah behind the counter, pouring coffee and bringing smiles, a beacon of resilience that drew him forward. "Hey, you," she said, her eyes brightening with recognition. There was genuine warmth in her gaze, so unlike the cautious skepticism he faced the first time they met. "How was the canvassing?" "Eye-opening," he replied, a newfound confidence anchoring his words. "I realized that every story we gathered had the power to build something lasting, something that can't be torn down." Her intrigue piqued. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Are you ready to make those words into action?" "I am. I want to turn those stories into a community resource center," Jake declared, a fire igniting within him as he thought of the plans they'd discussed. "A place for families to share experiences, learn, and grow together. Just imagine how strong a support network we could build if we gave people the tools they need." Before Sarah could respond, he continued, each word spilling forth with increasing urgency. "I've already reached out to multiple local businesses for funding and collaboration. Today, I want to share a proposal with the community, something concrete that reflects their voices." As the implications sank in, a light caught in Sarah's eyes, a mix of surprise and admiration. "You really are serious about this? I thought it might have been just talk." "It's more than talk now," Jake said earnestly. "I've spent too long obsessed with my empire, ignoring the real wealth that lay in genuine connections. This community is where I want my legacy to lie." In that moment, Jake realized he wasn't just reclaiming his identity, he was ready to redefine what success meant for him. It wasn't merely financial security or public recognition, no, it was this, using his advantages to elevate others, lifting up voices that, for too long, had gone unheard. Sarah nodded, the initial hardness around her shoulders easing as she considered the possibility. "How can I help?" "People need to join you, and they won't if you're just talking at them. Invite everyone to a town meeting at the diner," Jake suggested, enthusiasm bubbling to the surface. "Let us share our plans, hear their concerns, and make adjustments together. I want them to see this as a collaboration." As Michael slid into the booth next to them, poised with his Lego creations, he sensed the momentum in the air. "Are we building something today?" he asked, his cheeks dimpled with excitement. With a smile, Jake replied, "We are building the first foundation of something great." This time, the challenge was twofold: crafting a center that offered support and an emotional reconstruction of his own foundations. The meeting came together gradually, the air charged with curiosity and buzz as community members gathered. People poured in, bringing their perspectives and experiences, each drawing inspiration from Jake's vulnerability that echoed with their struggles. Every story shared added structural integrity to the plans he proposed. "Trust was never my strength," Jake admitted to the group, who listened intently. "But today, I'm asking you to trust me, a man who has lived a life wrapped in ambition but who is dedicated to trauma and healing. I want to genuinely stand by your side." Sarah's voice rang clear as she explained how their conversations had prompted awesome shifts in Jake, soothing any lingering doubts. The meeting transformed into a collective brainstorming session. Ideas danced and melded as the community rallied around Jake's vision, not just as an ally but as an essential partner, one who now had solid, tangible intentions firmly rooted in the human experience. As he facilitated an input session, each voice resonated with purpose, reverberating through Jake's renewed identity. They talked about workshops for parents, resource drives for children with disabilities, and budget plans for the center. Through it all, Jake felt layers of past regret melting away, replaced by an undeniable sense of accomplishment. In the weeks that followed, Jake devoted himself to the realization of their plans. The project began to manifest beyond mere intentions. He secured funding, aligned local businesses, and fostered relationships with families, friends, and advocates throughout the community. It was exhilarating yet exhausting, a dance of responsibility he had long evaded. One morning during a community volunteer day, as Michael helped paint the walls of the newly envisioned center, Jake caught Sarah's gaze. "Look at what we're doing," she said, motioning towards the colorful murals reflecting the hopes and dreams of their families. Jake stood there, overwhelmed with pride and fulfillment, feeling an unmistakable shift within him. "I never imagined I could contribute to something so meaningful." "Sometimes it takes losing your way to find the right path again," Sarah replied, the warmth of her words striking him like the first light of dawn. Jake had emerged from the shadows of his past, stepping boldly onto solid ground, one where he belonged, not as a billionaire dining in sterile high-rises but as a man, vulnerable yet resilient, genuinely committed to reinvesting in humanity. The project was not simply about bricks and mortar, it represented a commitment to legacy, growth, and transforming individual struggles into collective triumph. The ability to lift others spoke louder than any figure on a balance sheet. In that moment, as the laughter of children and the warmth of community surrounded him, Jake realized that he had truly achieved a solid confidence, recognized competence, and established a position that resonated with his authentic self. He had proven to himself that wealth wasn't defined by networks or portfolios, but by the meaningful connections he created. As he joined Sarah and Michael in painting murals and crafting the new reality for their community, he let out a deep breath. A sigh of liberation washed over him. This was the life he had craved all along, a life rooted in fulfillment and transformed through relentless commitment to growth. If you believe in the power of transformation, if stories like Jake's inspire you, you need to subscribe now for more exclusive emotional tales. Don't wait even one more second to share this journey of overcoming with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these stories continue to reach those who need them. And don't forget to comment your reactions and theories about this monumental change.